Thank you, James. Thank you, Horatio. Happy to be here with you guys.
We're happy to have you. Horatio, how are you?
Good. What about you, James?
I'm not bad at all. It's nice weather in Washington we're having this weekend, so I'm excited. I detailed the car yesterday, took it on a little drive. It's good. It's good.
So I think this is more of an M type of podcast today, so the two of you should hit it off probably quite well.
Oh, says the person with the 1M. Yeah,
Actually,
no, you're not
speaking
gonna.
of that, I did drive the 1M yesterday after about 3 months of not driving the car, so it felt quite good actually. So I need to drive that car a lot more.
But
If
yeah,
you
you got
need
to put
someone to
some
drive it,
miles.
just send it over to Florida. I'll take care of that
Yeah,
for
that's
you.
what everybody says, but that's the point. I don't really want to drive it too much. But no,
Don't
if
worry
I
about
were
the
to live
resale.
in Florida or probably Seattle or maybe the West Coast, I will drive it a lot more. I feel like every time I take it out in Chicago, and I've said that before, it's just not a fun experience. It's either way too much traffic, bumper to bumper, stop and go, or there's just not any really good roads. I mean, you can go out of Illinois a little bit, maybe into Wisconsin or maybe Indiana, and you can get some decent roads, but nothing like you have, on the West Coast and even Florida. Maybe I mean, Florida it's flat, but at least it's nice. So
Yeah, the weather always typically cooperates, so taking them out for a spin like that is always good.
yeah. All right, so let me jump in and I'll let James, ask some of the questions. But basically, you're an M guy. I mean, your title says it all. You and I have known each other for quite some time. You've had some really special cars. You even wrote an article for us, and we're going to leave that in the description to if people want to read that about your, history with the BMW brand and especially with M cars. And you have a interesting collection that we will talk about. So I definitely encourage all of you that listen or watch to stay till the end. And without any further ado, tell me about your love for BMW, how it started, and then we can jump from there.
So I get that question a lot, and it's a bit complex because it started at a specific timeline, but I think it was always there. I just didn't know it all together, right? I've always been kind of like a Honda guy. A lot of the BMW guys that I know had a background in Hondas. And back when because I grew up in Puerto Rico, I was born in Massachusetts, but I moved to Puerto Rico when I was 7. So back in Puerto Rico, everything I had were Hondas. But I always remember seeing those E46 M3s and seeing the E30 M3s, and they always caught my attention. Now, the car that really came out and hit kind of the mark for me was the 1M that you have. When I saw that car come out, it was a game changer, and I really wanted one. But that was right when I had moved over to Florida, because I moved to Florida back in 2013, and I believe that was a single model year, 2013 model,
Actually, it was
and
11, I think. It came
it
out
was
in
11.
11, maybe 2012 came to the US, but I think 11 when it was announced or launched, yeah, something like that, yeah.
So it was right about the time that I was coming over here, and I couldn't make that commitment because I was just moving over, still had a house in Puerto Rico, was setting up a house over here instead of an office in Florida. So it wasn't really a good time. So fast forward to Daytona Rolex 2016. Um, they come out with the M2, and they have the M2 sitting at the BMW Classics display that they always bring out, and they always bring out some of the new models. And I see it in Long Beach Blue. And then at that point, it kind of hit me again. I said, wow, this is kind of like the 1M, small chassis, high output engine. And I just started obsessing about the car. And then the more I read about it, the more difficult I understood that it was to get your hands on one, because you had to go through the allocations. Not like you just walk onto the dealer and get one, that they were going to be sitting there. And that just made me want it even more. So at that point, I started hunting, and still I was on the fence. Do I go and get a 1M, or do I get a brand new M2? Because at that point, the 1M has held its value so well, and it's been going up, that they were basically the same cost. So I was sitting there like, do I get an older one, or do I get a brand new one with warranty? It was my first BMW, so also, you have the concerns that always people say, if you get one used and it's not well maintained, it's going to be expensive to upkeep them. So ultimately, I went with the M2, and I put in a couple of deposits at a couple of dealers to get an allocation, and I was able to land one here in Florida, and it was one of the earlier ones that came in. I think I took delivery of that one in September 2016. It was a 2017 model at that point, and I wanted to do the European delivery, but I didn't have time to go to do that type of extensive travel at that point. So I did a performance center delivery. And at that point, once I got the car at the performance center and did the whole driving exercises with them, I completely fell in love with the brand. And that kind of, it just unchained, it was a snowball effect from that point on. I had still a couple of my old school Hondas, because I've always been a Honda guy, but old school ones. I'm not like the new generation. I haven't liked them. And I had like 4 CRXs at the same time, which was one of my favorite Hondas. And I slowly started selling them all. And then I kept the M2 and a 91 CRX that I had restored, but it had no AC. And I had already sunk in like $5,000 into this car. I'm like, I don't want to drop $1,000 more on AC. And I was doing that as a daily while the M2 was a weekend fun car. And then I got one of those really bad days in Florida with tons of rain. Like today, I was telling James earlier that it's raining, you can't see past 10 feet in front of you. And my whole car was fogged up. And at that point, I said, you know what? I'm done with this. Put it up for sale. Next day, I found the 2011 135i. It was one of those transition models. So it was a pre-LCI, but it had the N55 already in it. Black sapphire metallic, red interior, like 40,000 miles, one owner car, always in Florida. So I called the dealer and I said, look, I'm going to go up there tomorrow. And if it looks like it looks in pictures, I'm going to bring it back home. And it was like a 2-hour drive. And I went there. He's like, well, it has a recall of the airbag. I can't sell it to you. I said, well, it's 8 a.m. I'll be there like at 5. You have all day to do it. And he was like, okay, this guy is serious. So I ended up going up there and brought the car back that same day. So at that point, I'm already committed to the brand. I got 2 of them. I sold all my Hondas. And again, I thought it was going to stop there, but it just continued.
Yeah. So before you go on with the other collection, because you're starting to build up from there, just to jump back on the European delivery, honestly, that's really the one unique experience that BMW has done really well for their customers. And it's sad that they had to cancel that, probably because of COVID. Hopefully it's coming back, but I can tell from my experience, I've done 3 European deliveries with my own cars, and then I did kind of like a fake one to write a story with BMW's car. So I still went there to pick it up and redo the whole thing. But honestly, it's the best experience to buy your own car. Aside from the fact that you can drive it in Europe, it's your own car and you can drive it and you can break it in there and all of that. It's just fun overall. And then the excitement to wait for the car to get here, and the tracking process. It's OCD a little bit, but hopefully it comes back. But if it does come back, I strongly encourage you or recommend you to do the European delivery. We will fall in love with the brand even more, because it's quite unique to go to the Vel to pick it up. A lot of people have done it. You have this special delivery area. You come down the stairs from a lounge, and then you see your car on the round turntable, and you get to learn the car on the spot with an expert. Then you drive off, and honestly, it's really amazing. So too bad you couldn't do the M2. That would have been a lot of fun to take it to the Nürburgring maybe and have some fun.
Absolutely, yeah. And like I said, it's a really great experience, and I'm happy I was able to do it with a car that I bought afterwards.
So you've actually done it?
Yes, I did it.
Oh, you did? Okay, so which car did you do it with?
The M2 Comp. So I started my whole fun with the brand started with the M2 and the 135, but those 2 cars I no longer own them. I sold.
Gotcha.
The 135 I sold it last year in December on Bring a Trailer, because I was trying to make space for another car that came in. And the M2, I went into the brand, and I'm again, because I was like a Honda guy, my thing was the forums. So I started getting on some of the online forums for the BMW. Sure. And since I was one of the early adopters of the F87, I was always right in the beginning of it, and I started modding it. I was lying to myself. I said I was going to just do suspension and maybe a couple of small mods, and then the car ended up being full dining car. And at that point, I said, yeah. So I traded that one in as soon as the M2 competition was announced. So Again, I was on the forums. You know that in the line of work that you guys do, you know that there's always leaks. So they started talking about the potential of putting in an S55 in it. I said, well, at that point, I'm going to have to jump over because I know that the tuning capabilities of the S55 are much more superior than the M55. So I went to the dealer and started talking to them, and they had no idea what I'm talking about. I'm like, yeah, it's coming. Here's a deposit. I want the first one. And they're like, but they haven't even announced. I said, trust me, it's coming. Just put me on a list as soon as you get on location. And they were great. I mean, my local dealer, I have a great relationship with them. We've done auto shows together, and I help them organize, events every now and then. So as soon as the first allocation came in, they gave me a call and said, it's yours. And I traded in my M2 for it. And I actually ended up getting a great deal because they bought it for a really good price. And I ended up almost with like $6,000, $7,000 in my pocket to put onto the M2C.
Nice.
And at that point, I did the European delivery. And
all right, so tell me about that one. So tell me how, what was your experience?
I'm extremely jealous, just so everybody knows, because I didn't get a chance to do that. And then now it's gone. So I'm hoping that I will either A, live vicariously through your guys' stories, or B, BMW will bring it back. And then maybe, who knows, G80 CS, maybe. I don't know. But, but walk us through.
I'm hoping that they actually bring it back. And I've been talking to a couple of BMW NA guys. Horatiu knows that I work a lot with Tom and with Alex from BMW NA, and we've been trying to see if we can do something special with the BMW CCA members also. So if they can't do it with everyone, at least do it with CCA members. But I really hope they bring it back because, like you said, Horatiu, it's a whole different experience, right? For me, building that car and going to Europe to get it, it was a game changer because at that point I already, like you said, I really like the brand, but it gets completely at another level when you travel and basically have a vacation paid by BMW. Because honestly, I got a 5% discount off of MSRP, and that same amount of money that I'd saved on the car paid for travel, for hotels, and for basically a expense paid trip of 10 days in Europe. So that was amazing.
Let's provide a little bit of context though to like the listeners and viewers, because it's not like baller status, like 5% off MSRP. You weren't like staying at the Ritz-Carlton, right? Like while there.
Yeah, no. So really, it's a trip that I scheduled just to drive some of the best roads that I can find, right?
Yeah, so let me jump in before you go further. So give even more context, because initially I covered quite a bit of European delivery. I mean, back in the day, the discount was like 10 to 12%, and the reason why the dealers were giving that percentage off at that time was because it was not coming out of their allocation. So the European delivery allocation was entirely separate. So basically, to them was just an extra car that they sold, but it wouldn't come out of their allocation, so they didn't have to really, discount the car that they want to make money on. So that's why they were giving deals back in the day, 10, 12% off, which was incredible. Then, of course, it got lower and lower, but it was also fairly easy for dealers to set it up. It was just normal paperwork. Usually guys that would buy a European delivery car, they knew exactly what they wanted, so there wasn't really a lot of micromanaging the customer. But basically, yeah, like you said, it just pays off for your vacation, and also early days, I mean, I think they phased that out, but back in the day, you used to be able to buy a economy ticket on Lufthansa, and they will give you a second one for free. Wow. So basically, back in the day, yeah, you could buy one, you can bring someone with you. Also, the insurance or whatever they call the green card to be insured in Europe while you're driving your car used to be 30 days back in the day. So there were some really amazing benefits back then, and I mean, even after that, they were still good, but 5%, yeah, it's still good enough to pay for a few nice hotels, basically.
Definitely, yeah. And I ended up flying to Paris, spent about 5 days there, then flew from Paris to Germany, pick up the car. But I designed the whole trip just really to hit, really good roads. And as long as I have a place to crash, get some sleep, and a nice shower and a meal, I'm good with it. So yeah, it was mostly like a couple of hostels, just staying like a mom and pop kind of type of hotels, which is great because the experience in Europe was you would get in, they would treat you like kings over there. It's crazy the hospitality that I saw in some of the regions in Europe that I went to see. But I actually ended up picking up the car at the well, the experience there is just like you said, it's amazing. They walk you down, you see the car on the turn, at the turntable, and basically all the lights spotted on it. It's incredible. And for me, it was a scary situation because I had ordered my car Long Beach Blue, the same that I had my M2. But after I saw a bunch of videos. I think you guys were part of the crew that was driving them at Ascari when it got launched.
Yeah.
And I was able to see the video of the Hockenheim Silver, and I saw kind of the sparkle on the color, and I said, you know what, I'm gonna switch it. And I switched it, and I did not see that color until I saw the car in person at the weld. So I was freaking out because I love the blue a lot, and I was like, do I play it safe and keep with something I like, or do I just go crazy and do the color that I haven't even seen? And I'm glad I did it because it was a refreshing change. But then they walk you through the whole process, and they show you how the car works. You get in and you see the odometer with only 2 miles, and it's brand spanking new. That thing hasn't even moved, right? So was able to get out. I drove about 1,000 miles that car over in Europe. I did Forca Pass. I did Stelvio Pass.
Nice.
And they're just roads that I would have probably dreamed only of driving. And being there and pushing that car, on those roads, it's just another level. For someone that's a gearhead, it is a bucket list kind of thing.
Did you go to the Nürburgring or no?
I didn't, because I think Nürburgring is northwest of the well, and because I hadn't done braking, I wasn't going to have the braking done. I was really concerned about getting on the track and not being able to control myself and wanted to push it, because I do track the cars. And being on the Nürburgring and not being able to push it was going to be painful.
I hear.
But I did enjoy. I mean, Stelvio Pass to me was amazing, and just the experience of being on that road. Like I said, I had only seen it in videos online and maybe pictures. I never thought that I was going to be driving it, and that was, to me, probably one of the best experiences that I had driving that car on those roads.
Yeah, that's quite unique, and especially that's a fantastic drive from Munich to get up there for sure.
Yep. I did a video on that one I put on YouTube. Super nice because it starts down. I went in October, so I was trying to time it to make sure it wasn't on the transition to the winter tires.
It's November, I think.
So we pulled I was able to talk to them and pull my delivery date a whole week forward so it wouldn't fall on those dates. And I did it. But as you start going up the mountain, there's no snow, and then when you get to the top of the mountain, it's all covered in snow. So that was an amazing view also, seeing that transition. So again, it was probably, to this point, it's been the best vacations that I've done in my life.
Nice. So here's a tip. If BMW USA sets you up for a new European delivery in the future with the members, you should ask them to set up a tour under the Welt. So they basically have this delivery setup area, basically, where you get to see how the car is being prepped, and then you can see them being put into the elevator and, going upstairs. So that's another interesting experience there, because, you've done the whole turntable and all of that, but to kind of see the car being prepped down there, that's quite interesting also. They have
I'll keep that in mind, definitely.
Yeah. So that's quite
So you get
cool
to see how they prep your car before it comes up on the turntable? Okay,
yeah,
nice.
but
very cool.
They usually reserve that for journalists, so if you request it, they will try to accommodate you. They let me do it with the 1M, basically, and they were even brave enough to let me put a car into the elevator and then just bring the car up there and then just drive it off the elevator. But that was way before social media was a thing, or Instagram and TikTok, because I would have definitely filmed that and share it. It was a quite unique experience. But
did you still act surprised when you went back upstairs and it came up on the turntable? Were you still?
Yeah, I mean, at that point, that was my third car, so I've done that before. So it wasn't. I guess the last experience that I had was with the might have been the M3 CS maybe, or M4 CS. I think they gave me that time. It might have been one of the two. And they changed the experience from the previous one too. So I did 2011, the last one, and then I took hiatus, and basically the next one was maybe, trying to think, maybe late. I'm trying to, maybe 4 or 5 years later. Yeah, maybe. And they changed the experience too, because now they had this area set up where you can actually learn about the car through some digitalization. They have this, large touch screens, and they show the car there, and it's kind of like a virtual reality kind of thing, which I didn't have it before. So that was quite interesting actually to see that there. So that was the reason why I did that story back then. So it's always changing and evolving, I guess, and that was the nice part about European Delivery, because my first one actually started in a place called Freimann, and it was a totally different delivery area. It was not set up for like a customer experience. You would really just go there, pick up your car, learn a bit, and just drive off basically. And that was my first one. And then when they changed to the Velt, completely different, and then they just got better and better. But yeah, absolutely. I truly hope that they will come back, because for the Americans it was a good deal. Like you said, we're not paying anything. Actually, we get discounts, or we used to get discounts, probably not anymore. But Europeans usually, they do that delivery at the Velt. They have to pay for it. So back in the day, the Europeans used to pay 500 or 1,000 euros to pick up the car there. And they would still do it because it was worth the experience to actually pay for it, when for us it was free. So
honestly, if they brought it back paying, it's something I would pay for.
Same.
Yeah, I mean, 500
Same.
euros, it's absolutely worth it.
People maybe that haven't done it, they wouldn't, they would be like, yeah, but I gotta pay. Yeah, but they have no idea of the experience that you get out of that. It's worth paying money for it, honestly.
Yeah. Cool.
I mean, how often do people buy cars, right? I mean, it's not you're not going grocery shopping, you're buying a car.
Yep.
So yeah, I would totally pay for it as well. I'm with you.
Especially, yeah, I mean, if you're you're getting a new M car, they're not cheap, you know that. So what's adding a couple more bucks in there to just have that experience? Honestly, I think people would definitely pay for it.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so what's the next step in your journey with, then you went into classics, right?
Yeah, so I went into the M2 comp. At that point, I still had my 135, only had two BMWs at that point. So I had...
Only two?
Yeah. Only two, because like I said, it was like a snowball effect. So I did the European Delivery, and I also did the redelivery at the Performance Center. At this point, I'm doing the deliveries up in Performance Center also because the official paint protector of the Performance Center is a really close friend. I met him through my first M2. He's Doug Payne from Extreme Colors. So all the cars that you see at the Performance Center that say the stickers and have all the Expel, he's the one that does it with his shop. And he's done all my work on my BMWs. So with the M2, that's how I met him. Ended up probably sending him like 40, 50 customers after that. And he was like, he hadn't met me, and he called me. He said, "You're sending me all these customers." We became really good friends after that. So when I did my M2 comp delivery, he actually ended up sending me a Expel track wrap roll, because I was so caught up with the excitement of the car that I didn't even think I'm gonna drive it over there for 1,000 miles. I'm gonna beat it up over there. So he sent me a roll of track wrap, and I'm in front of the Welt, trying to wrap the front end before my trip. And then you know me, I can be talking about cars all day long, and everyone that came out would stop and ask me what I was doing. It took me like 2 or 3 hours just to wrap up the front end for that trip, and I'm like, yeah, I gotta get going, because I had a timeline that I need to meet. So long story short, it was protected overseas, and it came back with that track wrap on it, and it got directly delivered to the Performance Center. Got prepped there just to make sure that I can get it to Doug so he can take care of it, of wrapping the front end on that one. Because like I said, I do track them. I take my cars on the track, and I drive them hard, so I want to make sure that they look good years after. So I dropped it off at his shop, and I made kind of like 2-3 day vacation while I was up there in South Carolina. And I'm driving around in my rental car, and we catch with a corner of my eye an E46 M3 in the car yellow. And it's an individual car, and we turned around, went over, take a look at it, and it's like this warehouse that had just a couple cars outside. And I'm start looking at them, and I'm getting ready to get in my car and leave, and out comes this gentleman and says, "Can I help you?" And I said, "No, I'm just looking, saw the M3 and just taking a look at it." He said, "You like BMW?" I said, "Yeah, I do." He said, "Come on in so you can see what I have inside." And he walks me into this warehouse. He probably has like 80 BMWs in it. Jeez. And I'm like, oh my God, what am I getting into? Good friend also. Again, I'm the type of guy that if I meet you and we connect, we're going to be friends for life at that point. So I met George from Road Trip Carolinas. walk in, and one of the first cars that I see is a 1974 2002 in the Granite Red. And I immediately look at it, I'm like, oh my God, this is the type of car that I need, because I'm an old school guy also with the Hondas. I said, I got rid of all my old school Hondas. I got the new BMWs, now I need something old to kind of balance it out. And I start talking to him about the car. He tells me everything. He's like, yeah, you can get in there and drive it down to Florida. It's that good mechanically right now. And I'm like, yeah, but I just got delivery of a brand new M2 Comp. I have a bunch of mods already lined up for the M2 Comp, because, again, for the M2, I was lying to myself saying I was just going to lower it. With the M2 Comp, I was already committed. I had talked to a bunch of companies, already had exhaust set up for it, a bunch of parts coming in. So I said, I can't justify buying another car right now. So that was, I think, in December 2018, yeah, because the M2 is M2C is a 2019 model. Mm-hmm. I think only 2 or 3 months went by. I had a couple friends in California that owned 2002s, and they said, look, it's about to hit 50 years. That model, it's going to start going up in price, and if you're going to get on one, you got to get on it now. And I'm glad I listened to them, because it's probably doubled or tripled in the price that I bought it for.
Wow.
But year after, in March, I call George and I say, hey, George, you still have that 2002? He said, yep, it's right here waiting for you, buddy. We just waiting for you to come get it. And I said, you know what? I'm going to talk to my friend Doug, because Doug is pretty close to his shop, and they actually knew each other. So I actually had my friend Doug go over, take a look at it, drive it, because when I saw it the first time, I didn't drive it. So I had him take it for a spin, and he said, look, the car's solid, it's great, it looks good, it's driver. And I get on the phone with George again, and I said, George, let's work on our price. And we settled the deal on our price, wired him the money, and like 3 months later, I had the car in Florida. So at that point, I got 3, and I love that car. I mean, the 2002, honestly, if I could sell any of the cars that I have except that one, that's the only one that I would not sell. Anyone comes up to me, makes me an offer on any of the other ones, I would sell it, except the 2002.
You shoot him. Get out of here. Walk away from the 2002. Leave it alone. So 1 second, is George into that business? Like, does he actually sell cars, or does he just have a beautiful large collection?
He does. So George it's an interesting story on him, because George was, I think it's Century BMW that's up there. It's one of the biggest BMW dealers in South Carolina. He started working there just I think as a teenager, and he kept progressing until he actually was the manager. So the reason he has so many cars is because all the people that he used to sell them when they were brand new, when they were ready to sell them, they will call him and say, hey, you remember the car you sold me back in the 80s and the 70s and the 90s?
Yeah.
I have it. Do you want to sell it? And he just buys them. And I walked into only one of his storages. I think he has like 3 of them. And I think last time we talked, he had like 150 classic BMWs.
Wow.
So
would you say he has a larger collection than Enthusiast Auto Group?
He is. He does. Now, yeah. EAG are, top notch, fully restored, and they're ready to go. George cars typically need some tender loving care, so he tweaks them and gets them ready to run, and then he sells them. So it's a really good option for someone that's looking for a car that they can work on and do some light work. But like for the 2002, I didn't do a lot. I just did aesthetics, lowered it a bit, did wheels, interior. I did Recaros from a 320i, just small tweaks to just make them mine, because I just can't leave my car stock. And the car is a driver, and I've had that one for 4 years, and I'm telling you, it doesn't skip a beat.
I'm just picturing you with a giant smile on your face just every time you get in and be like, yeah. My 2002, let's go. Yeah.
It is. It's one of those cars that you can't stop smiling while you're driving it. And it's the slowest of all the cars that I have. And a lot of people ask me, how does it compare with the M2? Because the M2 comp is fully loaded. That thing is full bolt-ons, tune, it has crank hub done. I mean, James, you know that the S55 is really capable. I think mine is pushing 534 and 595 torque. So it's at that point where you tweak it up a little bit more. It's not going to be able to put it down, but I do track it, and I take it. Last week I was at Daytona doing the Rolex 24 layout, and it's a beast. It's so fun to drive.
Yeah, but I think the beautiful thing, especially, and car people understand this, is you don't need stupid power to extract maximum joy from your cars, right? It's
Absolutely.
like flavors and tastes. So the 2002 will bring you joy and happiness in a different way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, you enjoy that car pushing it to the limit because it's like just a fun small car. It's mine is a base model, base VIN model, but at some point in its life it had a TII engine drivetrain swapped into it. So it's got the mechanical fuel injection, Kugelfisher. I opened the hood on the shows and people are looking at it weird because they don't understand. They look for the carburetor, they don't find it, and then I start talking about the Kugelfisher pump and how it has like a PDF of 30 pages to set it up. It's a really unique setup on those cars.
That's awesome.
Cool. So what else do you have in your collection?
So fast forward 1 year. Again, I'm 3 BMWs. I'm like, yeah, I have some old, some new. I'm good. I don't need anything else.
So quick recap. You have F87 M2.
I have the F87 M2.
135.
Competition.
The 135 E82.
And then 2002.
And then I traded the F87 M2 for the M2 Comp.
Okay.
And then having the M2 Comp with the E82, I then got the 2002. So at this point, I have those three.
Okay.
I think it was Oktoberfest the year after I got the M2 and the 2002. It was, O-Fest in South Carolina, 2019. I decided I'm going to go and see my friend George again. Just to say hi to my friend. I was lying to myself.
Right.
I just wanted to see what else he had.
Of course, yeah.
So I come over. I'm enjoying with the O-Fest activities. BMW CA did an amazing O-Fest that year. And I go to see George, and talking with him, he says, come over. I'm going to show you something that you might know someone interested in. And I'm like, yeah. As soon as I saw it, yeah, that's me. I'm interested in it. 1987 E30 325 IS. Black on black, 5-speed. I think like only 2 or 3 owners previously. He has the window sticker on this car. It was like 28,000 brand new. Paperwork of all the maintenance, and I'm like looking at it. It's not perfect. It's original paint, so it has its swirls and it has its details, but it's a survivor. And the thing was 100% stock. And I told him, are we doing a return business deal? Discount return buyer? He said, how much do you want to pay for it? And I said, I want to pay this. He said, it's yours. So that's how I ended up with my 4th BMW. At that point, I said, yeah, this turned into an issue here because I don't have anywhere to fit them at that point. I keep on buying them. So that's how I ended up with the E30. And at that point, it was nice because I was driving at least all of them one time a week, and you can't let the antiques sit because they will go bad. And I made it a priority to make sure that I drove them at least once a week. I store most of them in my house, but my parents don't live too far from me, so I store one of the antiques at their house. It's another good excuse to go and see them at least once a week, go and trade the cars, basically make sure that I drive them and visit them. Yes. So I'm always bringing them out and driving them, and I could experience getting into like a 74 and then jump into an 87 and then in 2011 and 2019. So I can go through that transition of driving from the oldest to the newest and see how they change. And I think on that write-up that Horatiu was talking about, that's really important to me because I can go through that whole phase of seeing how they were, crude, no nannies, 100% connected to the car, all the way to a brutal machine like the M2 that has almost 600 torque and it will just push you into the seat in a painful acceleration. But it's amazing to see and experience that transition.
All of a sudden I want to do a evolutionary video with you there as you transition era specific. You're wearing era specific clothing while you're driving each one, giving your thoughts and opinions, and we just kind of transition from the first to the last. All of a sudden, that
would be cool. That would be cool.
I mean, Esteban did propose to me to come down and shoot the cars. I just never really had the time, but I guess it might make sense to go down once.
Come down, and the idea is bringing them all out. I did for BMW CCA, same thing. I had I was able to get 5 of the cars together because I added a 5th one that I haven't talked about. And BMW CCA wanted to do a spread, some of their younger generation, and how, you know, that collection came together. And I had John come out and take pictures of them. Jackie Jarrett did a really nice story piece on them on Beamer Life, and I had all 5 of them lined up. That was the first time I had ever had the 5 together. I would only do that again for someone special like you, Horatiu, because I washed.
We will shoot video.
I washed all of them within 2 or 3 days, and it was painful. I had never washed all my cars at the same time, and it was like after the second or third one, I'm like, oh my god, this is a lot of work.
It's a workout. You got real buff.
It is, and but it was fun.
That's why I'm bringing James and Nico and the entire team so we can wash cars.
And no, basically. I mean, you're gonna have to bring them so we can get each one of them driving it to the locations that we're gonna do.
That would be cool.
Yeah, we were cooking something with some special BMWs. Unfortunately, because of my schedule, hasn't really come to fruition. But I guess this is a good idea.
This would be a great sort of like thing that we can try and see how it goes. I mean, it's more baked than the start. The plan is more baked than Horatiu's actually letting on, but it's good stuff.
Well, you guys got my number, so whenever you guys want to jump on a plane and come visit me, I'll receive you guys.
Sounds good. So what's the 5th car?
So the 5th car, at that point, I always wanted also an E46 M3, and that's why I ended up adding that one just a bit over a year ago. And that was an interesting story also because I had...
What's the spec first?
What was that?
What's the spec, color, interior?
The one that no one wants. It's a TAG, so it's a titanium silver Dove car SMG. So this is the most dreaded M3 and the M3 community because no one wants the
black sheep of the family.
Yes, no one wants a titanium silver car. If it's Dove interior, they don't care about it. If it's SMG, even worse. At least it's not a vert. It's a coupe. But to someone like me that hasn't had, I haven't been for decades in the BMW community. I don't care like that. I don't look at them and say, it's got to be this color. It's got to be a comp. No, because at the end of the day, they're not going to stay stock because I just modify them all. Mm-hmm. So that was a interesting story. The other thing that has helped me keep on so deep into the brand also is that I met really good people around. I mean, I met you, Horatiu, through the internet. James, we've hit her up through Instagram a bunch of times. But also locally, I have a couple of shops that work on BMWs that started as just a work relationship, and then we ended up being really good friends to the point that they don't open weekends, but if they open weekends, they call me over so I can come and use one of their lifts. They have taught me how to work on some of my cars. I need to do something, they let me go and work on it and give me a hand. So that also helps because then you appreciate the brand even more. So I got 2 shops like that in Orlando. And one of them is the one that ended up with the M3. And he calls me and says, hey, I got a proposition for you. I said, what's going on? What's up? He says, I have an E46 M3 that I have a customer trying to sell to me. And it was because the car needed some work done to it. And he was, at that point, I think he has like maybe 12 cars. He has a bunch of BMW 2002. So that's how I know him, how I got introduced to him. And he's like, I'm trying to unload some of the cars that I have. I'm not trying to buy anymore. But I know you've always wanted a BMW E46 M3. I said, okay, I'm interested. Keep going. What's the deal here? He says, it needs some work and it needs this done and that done. And I said, look, if you can do whatever it needs, and you do the rod bearings and you do the vanos, and you do all that for this price, I'll buy it. And he looks at me and says, I can do that price, but it's going to take like 4 months. And I said, do I look like I need a 5th car right now? You take all the time you want. Did the deal. About 4 or 5 months later, he calls me and says, hey, the car's ready. I said, perfect, let me go and get it. So I actually ended up driving my E30 down to Orlando to swap cars with him because I wanted to do some work on the E30. And I ended up picking up the car. Had it for a bit over a year now, but that one also an amazing deal. I mean, it's just one of those once in a lifetime kind of deal that you just can't say no to. So that's why I added that one and ended up selling my 135i because I couldn't handle, you know, so many cars. So at that point I sold the 135 on Bring a Trailer and ended up with the E46 M3 basically as a daily, but that car, I've been tweaking it since the first day that I got it. So, I mean, the dove interior doesn't exist. It has a rear seat delete, has a Recaro pole positions in it, coilovers, headers. I threw on the Turner intake, so it's got the CSL airbox. That thing at 8,000 RPM is just screaming for its life. It's got a super sprint exhaust, 18 by 10 setup of Apex wheels, so it's really nicely tweaked. It handles almost as well as the M2. It just doesn't have the power, but that's what I wanted. I wanted something fun, something that, you know, was historic also. The E46 M3, a lot of people say that it's the best M3 that came out. The E30 M3 to me is a unicorn, but when it comes to performance and balance, I think the E46 M3 was really hitting the mark because that inline six, high revving, the balance that the car has, the size is like kind of perfect, and that's why I think it's one of the most that I've been enjoying lately. And yesterday I was with a couple of friends at their house. We did the Porsche brake kit that they adapt to these cars on that. Now it's just like it has everything. Everyone thinks that I'm prepping it for track, and I'm like, no, I just want to have the car to be as fun or maybe more fun than the M2 comes. So, you know, I use something daily that's also entertaining as the weekend car that I have.
Do you bring them back to stock when you sell them, or? So
the 135, that's the problem, because I keep on buying them. I haven't sold them. The only car that I actually sold was the 135. The M2, it was really loaded with dyno parts, but the dealer typically also is good with dyno parts, so I traded that one with all my dyno goodies on it. And the 135, I was debating if bringing it back to stock. That car had a lot of work on it. It was full bolt-on suspension, a bunch of things, but I thought it wouldn't sell on Bring a Trailer because typically you see a lot of cars there that are pretty much stock or stock, you know, OEM plus. But mine was pretty modded, and I submitted it, and they took it in, and they said, yeah, I think this is a good candidate for Bring a Trailer, which I just wanted to try out and see how it went. And it had a lot of good feedback on it. I mean, the auction had a tons of comments. I had like 3 potential buyers that said, you know, if the deal falls through with the first guy, call me, because they liked it. It was nicely modded. It wasn't over the top. You know, it was it had a Dynon turbo on it, upgraded turbo. It had, you know, all the necessary hardware to support the added mods. It had an ESS tune. It had Connie yellows with IBAC, so it was low but still comfortable. Again, it was a really nice tweaked daily that was really fun, and I sold it like that. I said, you know, I enjoyed it. Mods typically don't add value to the cars, but it's still, I think I sold it for like $4 or $5 grand more than what I bought it when I got it in 2000, what was it, 16 or 17. So it was still a good deal. I enjoyed it for 4 years. I put probably like 40,000 miles on it, and I probably had close to 10, 12 grand into it, but at the same time, you know, I enjoyed it for 4 years. So I think I broke even, pretty much to say so, and It was well received.
Very cool.
That's awesome.
So what would be your ideal BMW garage? Let's just stick to BMW maybe.
Ideal garage, I think you would have to have something historic like the M1. You know, if money wasn't an issue, I would have a big warehouse that would have at least an M1. It would have to have a 1M because the E82 to me is a chassis that I loved it so much. That's why I got the 135i, because I couldn't justify getting the 1M while having the M2. So I said, you know, I'm going to get the next closest best thing, which is the 135i, and I enjoyed that one a lot. So I would probably add a 1M to that. Definitely a M3 CSL. I mean, I haven't seen one in person yet. BMW CCA Foundation has one in their Power of M display. I'm looking forward to heading up there and seeing that in person. I think that was car that BMW just went, bonkers. It was just above and beyond at that time. Having a car that, that had that type of build in those years, it's just incredible. So I think I would definitely have a E46 CSL in there. I think that's E30 M3. I mean, I would probably have to pick at least 10, but those are probably some of my favorite ones that I would have to have. A lot of people tell me that I need to experience the E90X V8. I had a couple friends that had them, drove some of them. They sound amazing. It's just another level of sound on those cars, but I haven't bought one. So a lot of people tell me that's the next one that you got to get into because you will probably enjoy it a lot. But yeah, I think I would have to have, like I said, the M1, a 1M, E30 M3, and probably an E46 CSL would be at least four cars that I would have in a garage like that.
For the people
So
that aren't
if you
watching, when Esteban said 1M, Horatio's face just kind of lit up.
Oh yeah,
It's like, oh yeah, that's right.
he knows he has a unicorn.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked about it like in the past. I've always thought about like if I sell it, what would I replace it with? And there was really nothing out there that would say, yeah, this is a good replacement for it. I mean, I looked at other brands like Porsche, maybe the Cayman GT4. I always thought it's a fantastic car, and that would be a good replacement for the 1M. But it's probably a lot more expensive too. But even then, I still don't think that even if somebody would propose an even trade, I'm not sure if I would trade it in. I mean, it's so unique. Even yesterday when I was driving, constantly people taking photos of their car from the rear, from the front, thumbs up all the time. If I were to drive a 7 Series, $160,000 car, not many people would give me the thumbs up probably. But with that car, it's something else, But I definitely need to drive it more. What would be one M car that you would like to own in the future? So new ones, like what's something that excites you? So I mean, there have only been a few. I mean, I can outline them for you so that way make it a little bit easier. But I think like the M8, I think it's a fantastic car to drive. It's not a pure M, but it's still a great car. M5 CS, honestly, one of their best, and recently starting to pick up a lot of press and attention. I guess Motor Trend did a bunch of test drives, then Dr. Muro did an M5 CS, and we've tested that car quite a few times, and it's fantastic. Then I guess G80 generation, G82, M3, M4, and especially the M4 CSL. I took a ride in that, cool. And M3 Touring or the next M2 G87.
So it's all the ones that you mentioned. I've driven, except the G87, right? And the M5 CS I have not driven yet, but I've driven the M8 on the track, right? I've pushed these cars around, and it's amazing the way that they perform regardless of their size. I mean, the M8 is a weapon. It's a really pretty big car, but it doesn't feel the size.
Huge, yeah.
Our car that I always drive, and I drive hard on the track, and then end up, getting out of it and saying I need to get one of these, is typically the M5 comp. I have not driven M2 M5 CS, but I have driven M5 competition about 2 or 3 times on track, and it's a weapon. It's a car that you point it and you just hit the gas and it will go there. It just doesn't physically conform to the size that it is. It just behaves like a much smaller car, and it's a weapon. It's a beautiful car. So it's a car that, again, I always drive it, and then it's dangerous because then you get out of it and you say, yeah, I need to get one of those for myself. I think M5 is a beautiful car also, so probably out of the newer lineup, it would be a car that I would probably get. But at that point, it's like you said, right? They're up there, and they are kind of like in the same price range of like a Porsche. So totally different segments. Not a lot of 4-door sedans that can perform the same way that car does. So I mean, the price is there, and I think it merits the price because it does have the performance. I've driven the G80X also. A lot of people have a love-hate relationship with the front grille. I got past it immediately because it's always when a new model like that comes out, you have a lot of people that are in the camp of, I love the previous model, I don't want to see the change, and others are like, yeah, the change is refreshing. I wasn't looking at the model at that point from the outside. I just knew the S55 was going to be a weapon. It already had been launched on the X3M. I had seen people modding it, so it's a car that the engine has so much potential, and we've seen it already. A lot of people are modifying them, and they're super fast. So I never had anything against the model and the design. And as soon as I got behind the wheel and I started driving one on the track, same thing. I'm like, okay, yeah, forget about the grill. It's an experience to drive, because same thing, point it, hit the gas, it will go there. So I don't see myself probably jumping into a G80 or G82, because still they're too big for my taste. I like small cars. I mean, every car that I own right now, like I went through them, they're all small, they're nimble. I don't like really big cars. The M5 I would probably consider it, but the G87 does have me intrigued. I mean, I have not seen it other than all the spread that you guys have done. I've been following every story that you guys do, because again, I'm one of the early adopters of the F87. So obviously the next generation, it's even if I don't get one, it's going to be something that I'm going to look forward to, because I want to see how that model evolves. So I'm really intrigued to see how that car is going to come out, see the potential that's going to have, because I think it's one of those cars that is going to surprise a lot of people. I just don't know if I would be ready to jump into one, honestly.
So on that topic, as I was just thinking about that as you were talking, what's your take on the M2 being or having a version of a rear with an xDrive? And I'll tell you why I'm asking after you give me the answer.
So I saw that information, earlier this week going around. I think it might lose the essence of what it is. It's the M2 is probably one of the last cars that still has that true, small, powerful rear-wheel drive car offered in a manual 6-speed. And I think if you go to the all-wheel drive, it kind of loses that essence. You can't pair the xDrive with a manual transmission, which is a deterrent for me right off the bat. I love cars that I can still, buy manual. Both of my M2s and the M2 Comp, I ordered stick shift. I'm not trying to beat records on the track. I just want to have fun, enjoy, driving them. So yeah, I think it would be performance-wise. I think again it would be a weapon, because you're basically putting the whole drivetrain of a G80X, M3, M4 into a smaller platform, and we know how that works. That recipe on the M2 is amazing, because it's the same M3, M4, about 8 inches shorter, same width. So it's a car that the shorter drivetrain length actually makes it behave so much differently, and it's much more engaging. So I think you would have that same experience with the F87 if they do the xDrive, but at that point I think it loses the essence of true small sport car, rear-wheel drive, 6-speed manual, which is what I like. I think a lot of people love about the original M2.
Yeah, so let me give you a bit of a background story there. So the reason why I'm asking, so that document that came out, it is not something that, from what I know, BMW doesn't have an M2 xDrive today. So from what I know, they're not planning on having one today. Are they thinking about it? They're always thinking about different variants. And the reason why I'm saying that, because I had an informal conversation with BMW M recently, and the topic only came up when I said that after we published the videos and the articles and all of that, we've seen a lot of feedback from people saying, how about an xDrive? We need an xDrive in M2. And I told them that I was quite surprised, because I've always thought that people wanted a fairly light car and, rear wheel drive, a pure BMW M. And then, surprisingly, there were a lot of comments on social media, on our website, on YouTube also, saying that, an xDrive would be great. And then I did a couple of polls, I think, on social media, and most of the people answered that they would love an xDrive. Of course, it's a small sample, maybe a few thousand people that reply to that, and probably some of them are probably from the US, so we love xDrives here, and especially in snowy areas and all of that. But it's an interesting one, and I'm sure that it got BMW thinking even more. I'm sure they were thinking before, if they will do one in the future. And for now, I know that there is no such plan. Will that change? It's possible in the next few years. But this brings me to the actual subject of this. It's really that if they do make a special G87 M2 CS, for example, or let's say CSL, maybe that's a stretch, but I do envision them doing a CS. I don't see them not doing a special edition on the last M2 of its kind. So if they do a CS, this car that I drove, the G87, and I'm sure James heard this before, but I've said it already starts as an M2 CS. So the performance, the driving capability, it's the same as the F87 M2 CS. It's already up there. So clearly, if you're going to do a new M2 CS, it's got to be over probably 500 horsepower, maybe like around that. So then clearly you're getting into the xDrive territory there where you need to put an auto on it. I mean, you could do manual, but ideally you'll have probably an xDrive then. And then basically that will be your special M2. There might be just a limited run and it's xDrive, and like you said, you're taking the drivetrain, the components from the M3 and M4, so there shouldn't be a lot of development efforts, and I think it will sell. I mean, you don't have to sell a lot of numbers, but I think there will be a good amount of people that would love to own an M2 xDrive. And one other thing that somebody else said, I said, well, yeah, but it's going to be like 200 pounds heavier, maybe. And he's like, yeah, but the car, it's already heavy.
You don't feel it, yeah.
It's already heavy.
And with the power that they have, you're not going to feel it.
Exactly. So it's like, it's still a very heavy car anyway. So might as well just put an xDrive on it and make it a year-round car for a lot of people and a lot of fun to drive. So I'm actually interested to see what BMW M will do with this.
That's probably a lot of people that have been able to experience the G80X competition, right? This, like I said, it's a car that once I drove it, because all the G80X that I've driven have been the 8-speed automatic. It's an amazing transmission. I mean, it's amazing that it performs that well. It's not a DCT. They went away from the DCT. It's a full auto, and the car performs amazingly. And it doesn't surprise me that people would be open to a G87 xDrive because they probably have already experienced what a G80X M3 M4 does, in that trim, and they know that it's a really capable car. And like you said, I mean, I don't have to deal with winter here in Florida because I'm burning all year long, and I don't need to deal with snow. But I'm pretty sure people that would be in other states that do have to deal with that type of weather would like to have an all year round car that they can actually enjoy on the summer days and push on the track, and maybe during the winter time be able to still drive it to work. So it doesn't surprise me that you got that type of feedback, because I think it's a really good combination that they have in the G80X.
Yeah, and I think for BMW M it's a safe bet. I mean, I can't speak for them because I don't know the economics behind it and what it costs really to do a different variant. But I think if it's coming down to the business case, are we gonna sell this? I don't think they'll have a problem selling it, especially if you make a limited run like a CS, and make it all the xDrive, So, but I have a feeling that, and I've said it before, this is the last time the BMW M can actually build some interesting cars. That's why you're seeing the M3 Touring. That's why you're going to see the M5 Touring, right? That was big news. And of course, now they have the M2 that they can do a lot of stuff. It's really the last of its kind. So it would absolutely make sense to do all the crazy cars they can on it, because that's just never going to happen again. And with that being said, and I'm going to let James ask you something about the M3 CS next, but I want to, it's a nice segue into your role as a BMW M, president of CCA. How do you think, the future will look like? So we're going to have eventually M electrified cars. I don't know if it's going to be hybrids first. Some of them might be, some of them might go full M electric. But how do you think that's going to impact your community, your membership, your, I would say, club, basically? Because right now a lot of people in the club, they're still into the old school M cars and all of that. But I'm curious how that's going to impact the whole club.
So it's a mixed bag. I think I even though I'm in this role, I wouldn't dare to speak for the entire M chapter community. From that perspective, because it is you have the old school guys that just want to, the E30 M3 diehards. They don't want to do anything to, with the newer M3 M4. They're like, yeah, it's too big, too bulky. But then you also have the younger generation that they're not into the older cars anymore. They just want to have the newer, techy, powerful G80X. So I think it's something that we can't get away from, right? The future is going to bring the electric into it. You already see the I-40. You drove that. I think it's an amazing car. I saw it. It looks beautiful. They have the I-50. I think it is also
M50i.
M50i. So
M50,
that's also another car that I've seen pictures and videos of them, and it's an amazing looking car. And I've heard that it has a really great performance. So I think it's going to be the future where they'll probably do a hybrid, and you'll see the performance. And again, the people that are probably against it will start seeing that it works well for the power distribution and the power delivery. So I don't think it's going to be a really harsh transition, because it's where every other brand is going also. I think you'll still have the people that are going to be holding on to the older cars like that. Myself, I think that's kind of where I fell into the role for the M chapter pretty well, because I'm not super young and I'm not super old, so I'm kind of right smack in the middle of the demographic, and I have a passion for the older ones and for the newer ones, and I'm pretty open-minded. I'm not against someone telling me that they're going to go away from a purely rear-wheel drive M2. I think it would work, an xDrive M2. A lot of people are probably not going to like the idea, but I think a lot of people are going to drive it and they're going to fall in love with it. So I think it's something that we can't get away from, and we see the regulations on the emissions also coming hard, and on the European side, it's going to trickle into the United States eventually. So it's something that we can't fight. How far out it is, I have no idea, but I think the future, as long as they balance it well. It doesn't matter if it's electric, if it's full electric, if it's hybrid, as long as it has the same balance, the same behavior that these cars have, where you can get into them and push them to the limit, and they drive, like a sports car, but then you look back and you have a back seat and you have maybe even 2 extra doors. Yeah. That's what's going to get the people hooked on them, right? Because it's being able to have a car that you can fill with people and go and cruise out to go have dinner. And then the weekend after, you can be on the track, pushing it to its limits and being, out there competitive. And I think that's something that BMW is never going to lose, because they have a lot of people online that are hating all the new designs. But as soon as you get behind the wheel and you drive on the track, you forget about how it looks, because the performance just blows you away. And I think that's something that, as long as they keep true to that, it doesn't matter where the brand goes, they're going to still have the following.
Gotcha. Interesting point of view. Yeah, we'll see when they do the first full M electric car. I mean, the i4 M50, it's really just a
stepping down,
enhanced i4. It's not a pure M project, but I think the next generation, M3 and 4 might be the first one. We'll see that gets the full electrified. Interesting times.
Definitely. And
so, James, let me ask you a question. Yeah.
So the other, I forgot to tell you, the other car that I've been drooling about really is the M3 Touring. I mean, I don't know how they haven't thought about bringing it to the United States. I did talk to a couple of people from BMW and I said, you can't say that there's not a case of selling, because Audi has the RS6 and it sells. It's a hefty price tag, and I think you put an M3 Touring on our end and it will sell. I think people will buy it.
Yeah, I think it was a combination of timing, maybe some politics there, maybe the idea also that the M5 Touring might sell better because we're used to larger cars, so might have a higher rate of success. Some of those projects are sometimes, stuck between leaderships too, so who knows, how the ideas flow from one to another and who thinks the business case is better. I'm not sure, but I guess the official story is that the 3 Series Touring or wagon was not homologated for the US market, and then in order to bring the M2 Touring, you have to homologate that. When the M5 Touring and the base 5 Series Touring, it's homologated probably, so that's why it's easier. I'm not sure, but that's the official story. Who knows? I mean, it is what it is at this point. That it's not coming for sure. People are still hoping with petitions and all of that, and it's. You can still buy it. I mean, honestly, I know someone that wants to go and buy it in Europe, basically, and just keep it there. I mean, he travels to Europe, a couple of times a year or more, and he said, I don't mind buying the car and keeping it there. I just found out that you can actually put the car inside. They have this hotel called Motor World. It's a hotel slash, I don't even know how to describe it. It's hard to describe. They have one in Munich, and there's some other locations too, where you can also basically park your car inside a room. So you have like a glass separator from your room, and you can put the car right next to your bed, cool. Basically. And apparently you can. Someone was telling me that you can put any car in there in any room, and it's only like 200 euros a month to really store the car there. And I'm like, that can't be true. I'm like, 200 euros a month to just store the car in a safe place. It's kind of cheap, you know. Like, it can't be that cheap, but apparently that's a price. I don't know. I have to really look into it. But that's an interesting idea. You know, you can still buy the car there basically and just keep it there. And then
I've always wanted. I mean, I've because I was into the 1 Series. I always wanted the 135 wagon that they sold in Europe. I think that would have been also.
Did they sell a 135?
They
wagon?
had the
hatchback.
Yeah,
the 5-door.
The hatchback,
the 5-door.
Yeah, they have a better one. They have an M140i, which is better than the. So when that's the one that you want.
When they came out with the 135, it was also the N55, and I was like, "Yep, that looks nice. They should bring it over." Yeah. They come out with a 140, the M140, and I think I had the B58 in it. I'm like, that would have been a hit over here because again, you have a small hatchback, powerful. You can store all the stuff in the back. They look cool. There's a couple people that have converted them to have the M2 comp front. I don't know if you've seen some online.
I haven't seen it. No.
Yeah, there's about 3 of them already that they have B58 in them, 140 converted, and the front end has the M2 comp front, and it looks good. It's like a shooting star M2. Nice. So it's if
I drove that car.
If a Kanshu would have come out brand new, that probably would have looked like that. But yeah, it's something that I think. BMW probably would have made a good, sales case to bring some of those hot hatches over here and done some damage on the market over here because a lot of people probably would have bought them.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't recall what the market was. I mean, I drove that car from Munich to Geneva for the auto show years back, maybe at least 10 years. And I recall putting in the request for a press car, and when I told them that I wanted the 1 Series hatch and the M140, they're like, really? Do you want that car to drive all the way to Geneva? I'm like, yeah, that's exactly the one that I want. They're like, you don't want a 7 Series or a 5 Series? Like, no. I just want the M140i. Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I don't recall what the market looked like back then. If the market for hot hatches in the U.S. is probably as popular as it is today with some of the, Asian brands that brought us some really nice cars. So I just don't recall the landscape back then, but I guess everybody was all in on SUVs and different variants of SUVs back then, and they were exploring all the crossover, in every single segment. But I guess what's is it 15 years or 25 years now to federalize the car?
I understand it's been 25. I don't know if they've changed it.
25, okay, so still ways to go on the 1 Series then. But eventually,
there's actually a black market one in Florida. Yes,
oh, really?
There's one that we've seen around. Oh. I think it's stored somewhere. I mean, I think it's illegal that you can. It's like some of the GTRs that you see them rolling around. But in Florida, I was sharing the other about 2 hours ago. I saw someone tag me on a video of a F1 Formula driving on the road.
I saw that.
And I'm like, yeah, that's probably legal here in Florida because you see some cars on the street that you shouldn't see them. So
he's like, when in Florida.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
So James, let me ask you a question too, because you've been really quiet.
I have been. What's up?
So you mentioned earlier the G80 M3 CS. Would you trade in your F80 for the new M3 CS?
I was literally asked this question less than 24 hours ago at the last Cars and Coffee that I was at.
Great minds think alike.
Tough question. Honestly, I'm on the fence. I'm content and happy with the F80 M3 CS. It's got everything I need. I know that there's a few things that I would lose if I were to transition over to the G80 CS. I'm a romantic. I'm a sucker for analog gauges. I like this hybrid sort of cluster that's going on. You got a little bit of a screen, but you still have the old school analog, speedo and rev counter. I do like the DCT a lot. I was full hardcore manual transmission only. That wasn't an option in the F80 M3 CS. I was like, okay, I'll take the hit. It is a CS after all. It was a great deal. And then I kind of fell in love with the DCT. Not to say that I'm still not a massive manual fan. And if given the choice, I would pick a manual transmission still. But I don't know. I can't answer that question right now, H. I really can't. I need to feel, like, if it's got like a specialty hook, like if they offer it in that frozen green, like the M5 CS, and give them my license plate as M Chief, like that would be like it would pull at my heartstrings. Also, total cost probably also has a lot to do with it. Yes, the F80 CS is retaining its value better than the other cars in that family, the comp and the base, but at the same time, like, I'm content. I'm happy. It's a beautiful color, great combo inside with the Silverstone in black, Alcantara. I don't know. It's dangerous. It's exciting. It's we'll see. Stay tuned.
Esteban, did you drive the M3 CS or the M4 CS?
I would definitely like to do that. I mean, I think it's they're special cars. I mean, they always go above and beyond and make them feel special. I mean, James' car, I've seen it all over Instagram. We follow each other, and his car is a beautiful combination. So I understand why he has a really hard time making that decision, because he's got a beautifully spec one. DCT, I'm all about that also, because I am a diehard, manual car guy, but my 135 was a DCT, and that thing tuned, it's like it never skips a beat. It's always perfectly in boost. You have nothing to do, just to hammer the foot down, and it will shift perfectly every time. So I hear him on the DCT. So I see why he has the difficulty answering that question, because I know it's not
Now,
not easy.
I think if you drive the car, you might buy it, actually, because when I drove the M3 CS and M4 CS, I remember on track for the first time, I said this. That's exactly what I said in my opening paragraph. I said, this is what the F80, F82 M3 should have been, from the beginning. It's really a step up from the base car. Even comparing to the competition models, it was still a significant improvement. And it wasn't really, we've talked about it with James also, it's not even mechanical, really just the software tune-up that they've done and the small refinements. It was a huge jump, and honestly, that's the only car on that generation that I would own. If it would be on F80, 82, it would be the CS models, nothing else. That's the only one that I feel like it's truly special.
Yeah, don't do it.
Don't drive it, because you might buy
don't reach out to George either, because maybe he has one. Who knows? Just don't do it.
Oh yeah, I stopped having George on speed dial. He was just dangerous.
It's a practical car too. You get the M3 CS. It drives really nice. It's unique. There are not too many also. Honestly, with your garage, I feel like that would be the one that shouldn't be missing. Honestly,
the
probably
E90,
even more than E92. As much as I love the E92, yeah, I feel like the M3 CS and M4 CS, that particular generation, it's really one of its kind. There was nothing else like it, and it's not going to be anything like it. The new one, it's going to be probably faster and better, but not. I'm not sure it's going to be as much fun to drive as that one.
And the local deal had a black on black with the darker 763 wheels, and the thing looked amazing. Dark, like that, blacked out. It's just...
Yeah, black on black in Florida, that's going to be fun with sun.
That's how the E30 is, and you definitely need tints down here. But they're nice. It's just, again, like I said, the size with the cars... I'm a sucker for small coupes, so it would be hard for me to get into a bigger car like that. The M4 CS is still a pretty big car. I have a friend that has one, and it was lined up to my M2 last week at Daytona, and you see the size difference still.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way with you. And again, I've said it before. People probably heard me saying this many times, but same thing. I'm a small M. A car guy also. I've always liked the M2 because of that, especially the 1M, even the 135i and 135IS. That's why I also like the Z4 M40i, which I feel like it's almost an M car. It's really that good. So I'm kind of the same ways. And I was talking to someone also at M, and I said, if I'm going to buy another M car, it's going to be something special, like an M2 CS, M2 CSL, and that's one that I'm holding for, you know. And I know the designer that did a new M2, and you know, it's going to be a great car and all of that, but I want something more special. So to me, if I were ever to get one, it will be the
so I'll jump
CS
on the small car
CSL
bandwagon too, because like I feel like the F80 platform is the right size for me. I think the G8X is bigger, of course, because it is. I've driven the M5, the M5 Comp. I haven't driven the M5 CS yet, but they do feel too big for me. And I'd be more inclined to look at the G87 CS, actually, or CSL if they make one. Even though I'm a big fan of 4 doors. It's part of the allure, part of the like magic that gets me excited to be able to say, you know, yeah, I can, like Esteban, to your point, I can fit people in the back if I wanted to. There's space. It's got an actual full-size trunk. It sounds great. It looks great, in my opinion. And it goes fast, and it's loud when you want it to be. So I would say I would probably be more enticed by the G87 CS than the G80. Just because, again, the G87 CS would kind of retain, if not be slightly smaller than the F80. Because that's sort of the transitional thing over time. Like the 3 Series was the smallest, and then it wasn't, and then we got, you know, the 1 Series, which kind of like evolved into what used to be considered like that old school hardcore E30 vibe, you know, that feel. I talked about this in my review of the CS. Like BMW, in my opinion, did not do a fantastic job of marketing or educating the public on what the goal, what the thinking, what the reasoning behind the CS line is as a product in their portfolio. Like the M3 and the M4 CS came out and they did some marketing, but there was very little information on what is different. What do you get for the CS badge? And I think that's why the first generation of CS cars, the M3 and the M4, they did not sell well. That's why I got a great deal on mine. It was at the tail end of when they were still available. And then when the M2 CS came out, like people were now educated. They knew what the CS was. They're like, it's a tiny car with a powerful engine. Let's go. So to backtrack, I drove a base F87. It wasn't a comp. It was definitely not a CS, which is why I felt like it was underpowered. But by the time the M5 CS came out, like people now have had basically 3, let's say, cars, M3, M4, and M2 CS. And now everybody knows what they are. Which again, I guess for the first early adopters of the CS, for the M3 and M4, that was a good thing. Confusing that the M2 CSs that you saw on those lots were still there.
Well, I think it's based on me being around the F87 platform for so long. A lot of people didn't see the benefit between a jump from a comp to a CS.
The price jump is huge.
It was a lot. So it wasn't, you know, when you start looking at it from the perspective of the jump from the N55 M2 to an M2 comp, it basically made sense. The price jump wasn't that much. I think I had paid like 54 MSRP for my M2. It was like 61 for the M2 comp, but then you get the seats, you get the brakes, you get the S55. At that point, you know, people don't see the extra CS, you know, badge to be that much of a you know, justified by the jump in price. But again, if it's someone that's looking to have a collectible car that's going to pretty much keep its stock, it is an amazing car. The M2 CS, it's going to go down in history. I see that car being, you know, like an E30 M3 in the future. People that keep them and they're relatively stock, it's going to be one of those future cars that it's automatically a future classic just because of the
just
special,
the scarcity and the rarity, right?
Badge and exactly, and then the combination, right? So it's one of the most beautiful BMWs of the newer generation, and the options of the roof, like that they did, and the carbon parts. I think it makes it really, really special. I was actually trying to get one because when they announced the M2 CS, I thought they were going to do a last, you know, parting out F87 with an S58. So I thought it was going to get the S58 in it, and I said, if it does, I'm all over this car. But when they did announce that it was still S55, I already was so into tuning mine that I said, yeah, that's not. At that point, I already have mine tweaked to the point that it will just, overrun an M2 CS on the track. So I said, yeah, I'll keep mine.
Cool. All right, guys. So that brings us to the end. Probably, I think we've been rambling and talking for quite some time.
I mean, to me, it felt like half an hour. So I can talk. I can talk cars all day long.
Great conversation. So. I'll make sure to drop your Instagram also link. I mean, both of you, but Esteban too in the description, so people can follow both of your BMW journeys. I'm sure we'll run into each other very soon again.
It's always good to see you. I'm sure it's James. It was great to spend some time with you. We've talked a bunch of times online, but never had been on a call like this. And I appreciate you guys. Yeah, I appreciate both of your friendships. Being in the BMW brand to me, it's good with the cars, but it's the people that you meet through it. And I mean, Horatiu, I appreciate you a lot. We met through internet and made a friendship out of it. So.
Exactly.
I appreciate you.
That's all it's all about. That's what cars do. Yeah.
And honestly, still to this day, there's no stronger, more bonded community, more passion-driven community than the BMW community. So it's been a fantastic journey so far, and I'm just happy to be here with you guys.
Agreed. All right, guys. Well, if you're listening or watching, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel. We're on also all the podcast platforms. You'll find this podcast on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and so on and so forth. And, of course, on our YouTube channel. And we'll see you in the next one.